And we have breaking news to start up this hour of the lead. A federal judge ordering the Trump administration to fully fund SNAP or food stamps benefits for the 42 million Americans who rely on the food assistance program. In the month of November, amid what is now the longest government shutdown in the history of these United States, the administration has announced that they're going to appeal the ruling. The Trump administration is currently only partially funding the program through November from the nearly $5 billion emergency reserve it has been required to dip into. Let's go to CNN's.
Señores, extrañamente, la administración de Donald Trump hizo lo que nunca hace, y es ceder cuando un juez federal los obliga. En esta ocasión tuvieron que cumplir con una orden de financiar completamente los pagos del programa alimenticio SNAP, el programa que combate el hambre en Estados Unidos, ¿no? Y todo esto antes de que termine el día. Luego de correr desesperados a una corte de apelaciones diciendo que la orden del juez McConnell en Rhode Island era inconstitucional, al final del día terminaron pagando los $8,000 millones. Y ahora estados como Pensilvania, pues bueno, ya están avisando a los beneficiarios del SNAP que van a recibir su dinero en las tarjetas electrónicas. Unos $350 en promedio por familia. Bueno, significa una gran diferencia, ¿no? Entre dormir con hambre o tener algo para comer. Y sí, señores, esos fondos llegan a pesar de los intentos del propio Trump y de su administración por desafiar una orden judicial. Pero bueno, veamos de qué se trata.
This is quite a ruling from this judge ordering the federal government to make these payments in full when it comes to these SNAP benefits for 42 million Americans who have kind of been left in the middle and the lurch of all of this, as there's been this dispute playing out inside the courtroom from groups that are suing the administration over not paying these benefits during this government shutdown. And something that stood out to me, Jake, is something the judge referenced in this decision today, in this ruling, saying that they must make these SNAP payments by Friday, by tomorrow, where he essentially pointed to something that the president said on Truth Social earlier this week after the administration was ordered to pay about half of the SNAP payments, what they had from that contingency fund that they had. That had created a lot of questions here during the White House briefing, Jake, where Caroline Leavitt was acknowledging the president's post, but essentially saying that they were still complying with the court order. Those were actually talking points that were sent up to Republicans on Capitol Hill. The judge took it very differently and saw it as basically a rebuke of his order to pay those SNAP payments. And he's warning here that if this does not happen, there are millions of Americans, elderly and disabled, who could go hungry without these benefits being paid off in full. And so that's the question here of what the administration is going to do next, Jake, because we are told that they are going to appeal this decision that came down from Judge McConnell today, but we haven't yet heard from the White House or from the Office of Management and Budget on this matter. And certainly it is something that is becoming a crisis point for so many Americans in this moment and in this government shutdown that, Jake, right now, as we are here tonight, yes, there's a lot of conversations happening on Capitol Hill, but right now still no end in sight to that government shutdown.
Lo bueno es que después de días de incertidumbre, me atrevo a decir semanas, las familias más vulnerables, niños, ancianos, veteranos, personas con discapacidad, por fin van a recibir la ayuda. Y ustedes saben por qué. Porque los fiscales generales demócratas, organizaciones como Democracy Forward, pelearon en los tribunales hasta finalmente obtener 2 órdenes judiciales que obligaron al gobierno a cumplir. El Departamento de Justicia de Donald Trump, mientras tanto, ni siquiera podía mantener una historia coherente, porque hace 2 noches presentaron un escrito ante la Corte de Apelaciones diciendo que nunca en la historia un juez federal había ordenado al Poder Ejecutivo buscar dinero. Y amigos, eso es una completa mentira. El gobierno sí tenía fondos disponibles para cubrir los pagos del SNAP. Habían $4.6 mil millones en una cuenta. Y claro, este juez les dijo claramente, no hay excusas. También tienen un fondo de nutrición infantil con 23 millones. A ver, tomen algo de ahí. Los 3 millones que faltan, completen los 8,000 millones y paguen ya. Y claramente tenía toda la razón. Nada de pagos parciales, nada de de que supuestamente problemas administrativos. No, señores, solo cumplir con el deber, alimentar a la gente. La fundadora de Democracy Forward, que es Sky Perryman, dijo algo muy claro. Si el gobierno no pagaba antes de que terminara el día, a pesar de haber pedido una suspensión, iban a estar violando una orden judicial. Y literalmente estuvieron al borde de ese desastre, ¿no? Hasta último momento. Me parece increíble que en pleno siglo XXI tengamos que ver cómo se demanda al presidente de los Estados Unidos solo para que cumpla con algo tan básico como alimentar a los pobres. Ahora, por ejemplo, quiero que escuchen lo que dijo el gobernador Joe Shapiro. Él también habló sobre el tema de SNAP. No solo él, varios demócratas. Pero bueno, veamos lo que significa esto como una victoria para la democracia.
Our neighbors who were hungry. 1 out of every 8 of our neighbors relies on this funding, and it was taken away. And we went to work here in the Commonwealth to look out for our fellow neighbors. The first thing we did was we sued the Trump administration to get those SNAP benefits flowing again. The second thing I did, utilizing my authority as governor, was to sign an emergency declaration here in the Commonwealth, which I announced with Lori at Philabundance the other day. That allowed us to be able to free up an initial $5 million to be able to send to places like Share, because we knew that more people were going to come banging on their doors seeking help. As a result of that emergency declaration, Share alone received about $740,000 in additional funding that allowed them to purchase more food already and get that food out to the people who are in need in our communities. In addition to that, I appealed to the better angels here in Pennsylvania and appealed to the goodness of our fellow Pennsylvanians and asked people to step up and make contributions to the Pennsylvania Emergency SNAP Fund. And I have to just take a moment and thank so many generous Pennsylvanians who have already donated more than $2 million. And every single cent of that $2 million has made its way to Feeding Pennsylvania. And Feeding Pennsylvania has sent those dollars directly to places like Share and Philabundance and Weinberg and all of the other food pantries across Pennsylvania. So we are doing what we can, but we know that we can't possibly make up for all of the money the federal government has stopped. Why? Because SNAP, each and every month, totals $366 million. It's $366 million that ends up on people's SNAP cards that they can use when they go to the grocery store, what have you. So while we're so grateful to Share for stepping up and trying to fill that gap, we know that the only answer here is for the federal government to do the right thing and simply fund SNAP. That's why I sued them. And after I sued them, we won. And just yesterday, a court ruled that the federal government was required to pay out the full amount of benefits to SNAP. This happened yesterday afternoon. Now, the Trump administration, after getting that ruling, couldn't get their act together quick enough. But you know who did get their act together real quick? Secretary Arkush and the team at the Department of Human Services. What did they do? They immediately processed the batches of Pennsylvanians who were owed money on SNAP through our vendor that sends those federal dollars out and started to get that money flowing again.
Pues bueno, dos grupos fueron los que llevaron las demandas a los tribunales federales. Por un lado, como les dije, Democracy Forward, representando a iglesias, organizaciones civiles, ellos acudieron al juez. Luego, por el otro lado, tenemos a 23 fiscales generales, no sé si recuerdan esa demanda, igual demócratas, presentaron su caso en Massachusetts. Y eso lo hizo frente a la jueza Talwani. Entre ambos, arrinconaron al gobierno, arrinconaron a Trump, lo obligaron a elegir entre obedecer la ley o dejar morir de hambre a millones de personas. Cuando el gobierno volvió a violar la orden, ahí fue cuando este grupo, Democracy Forward, regresó a los tribunales. Y ahí obtuvieron una nueva orden de emergencia. Y el juez fue mucho más contundente. Él dijo, están jugando con vidas humanas. Hay 16 millones de niños que van a pasar hambre si es que no se financian correctamente este programa. De ese modo es que el juez ordenó que estos fondos, tanto de aduanas, nutrición infantil, sean para pagar los beneficios del mes de noviembre. Y bueno, les dijo, háganlo en este momento.
Well, look, Republicans want to get the SNAP benefits, and we've given the Democrats 13 times to vote to do just that. And even tomorrow, they're telling us they're going to vote against SNAP benefits once again. So I think that the Trump organization, the Trump administration, was going to use these $5 billion of emergency funds that were meant for disasters. The judge told them to use those, so they will. But beyond that, then who do we choose? You know, there's only a certain amount of money left. Do we not pay the troops? Do we not buy infant formula? Do we not pay for school lunches? What the real issue is here, my friends across the aisle need to come on back and fund the government again.
The president talks about the cost of living a lot. This is what he said on Fox just yesterday in reference to Tuesday's elections.
We've done so much. You know, energy is way down. Look at energy. We're going to have $2 gasoline. I did that. That brings everything else down. Groceries are way down other than beef. Now, beef is going to come down. You know, we have to do that. The fact is we have prices way down. We have prices down. Our country's doing well.
So inflation, just as a factual matter, it's at its highest rate since January when President Trump took office. Groceries are up across all product categories, not just beef, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Americans are paying close to $200 more for the same goods and services this year as they were last year. Are you concerned at all that President Trump is out of touch with how Americans are actually experiencing this economy?
Well, Jake, I certainly think we can do better. I think that we inherited a tough situation, 4 years of cumulative inflation of about 25%. The best news is that wages are outpacing inflation. Food inflation is around 3% right now compared to, again, that 25% in inflation. We want to do better. He's absolutely right that the price of gasoline is down from over $4.50 a gallon to $2.50 a gallon. Interest rates are down, but we've got work to do, and I look forward to doing just that. We need to impact the cost of health care. Housing are things that I'm concerned as well as that the Biden administration left us with some huge problems in those areas. So I'm looking forward to try to tackling the cost of health care, the cost of housing, and others.
I don't have to tell somebody from Kansas that the tariffs are having an effect on prices as well.
Look, I think that they're overstated. I think that we import less than 20% of our goods. The average tariff is going to probably impact the price to people here at home 1 or 2%. It's going to be a one-time hit as well. And at the other hand, we're bringing in more manufacturing jobs as well. So he's used them for good leverage. We shipped our big ships of sorghum today. Yesterday was soybeans. So the tariffs, in my opinion, have worked for good leverage and bringing some of those jobs back home here as well.
La realidad, amigos, es esta. Familias que podrían haber abierto su refrigerador, y a muchos hasta lo abrían y no encontraban nada. Gente que ya había gastado su asignación de octubre y esperaba desesperadamente los $350 en promedio del mes de noviembre. Solo pongamos una situación de imaginar alimentar a una familia de 4 personas con eso, para todo el mes. Y claro, mientras millones sufren, Donald Trump se burla públicamente, diciendo que no pagaría los beneficios, aunque el juez se lo ordenara, porque según él, los demócratas debían reabrir el gobierno. Y mientras los demócratas estaban peleando para garantizar salud y alimentos a los más necesitados, ¿qué hace Trump? Ahí sí hace lo que mejor sabe hacer: bloquear, destruir, distraer. Todo esto mientras fiesteaba en Miami, recaudando fondos para su empresa, organizando esos eventos temáticos de Halloween, ¿no? Del Gran Gatsby, en Mar-a-Lago. Él celebrando entre multimillonarios, construyendo salas doradas, baños de mármol, mientras millones de estadounidenses no tienen ni qué comer. A estas alturas yo me pregunto, ¿de verdad hay que preguntarse por qué en las últimas elecciones fue un desastre para los republicanos? Porque incluso votantes de Trump ya se cansaron y votaron por eso. Ahora bien, señores, justamente hablando de este tema de las demandas, ¿no? Ustedes sabían, ¿no?, que la congresista electa Adelita Grijalva del estado de Arizona, que por cierto, ganó su elección hace más de 6 semanas, aún no puede asumir su cargo, porque el Congreso simplemente no quiere reunirse. Ni siquiera es necesario que reabran el Congreso, solo no quieren reunirse, tal y como lo escuchan. Una funcionaria elegida democráticamente está bloqueada por pura conveniencia política. Adelita Grijalva, electa en Arizona, acaba de presentar una demanda contra Mike Johnson porque se niega a juramentarla. La razón: que el Congreso está en receso. Y todo esto para evitar enfrentar el caos político del cierre de gobierno. Un caos que el propio Partido Republicano ha provocado. Pero detrás de eso hay mucho más que decir, señores, mucho más que descubrir. Para mí, hay algo mucho más oscuro. Si Adelita Grijalva fuera juramentada, automáticamente se va a convertir en el voto decisivo para forzar la publicación de los documentos con Jeffrey Epstein. Y bueno, pues, adivinen quién no quiere que pase eso. Veamos de qué se trata.
6 weeks after her election, Arizona Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva still hasn't been sworn in because House Speaker Mike Johnson has kept the House in recess to avoid dealing with the government shutdown. In an op-ed this week, Grijalva called Johnson's extended recess shockingly irresponsible. She also noted the only difference between her and every other special election winner this year is that she'd be the decisive 218th signature on a discharge petition to force a vote on releasing files related to Jeffrey Epstein. Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva joins us again right now. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. I'm wondering if we can start off with you giving us a little bit of an update of that lawsuit that was filed by your attorney general to force Mike Johnson's hand to swear you in 6 weeks after you won your election.
Yep, we're at 46 days and counting. I would love to talk to y'all about something else, but here we are waiting. I think that what has been decided is the judge has been assigned to the case, and then Attorney General Mays. I think we're all hoping that the House, that Speaker Johnson is going to read the tea leaves and get to work, swear me in, so we don't have to go seek judicial support in him doing his job. But that's sort of where we are. I think there's going to be perhaps a request this next week to expedite a decision, but at this point, I think we're all hoping that the House will reopen.
Well, Congresswoman, do you have any confidence, given what we've seen come out of Washington lately, that if the court comes back and says you must be sworn in, that the Speaker will actually listen to the court?
I don't. I think that he'll dig his heels. I mean, let's be real. I mean, this administration, it doesn't really matter what court decisions come down, what the rule of law is. They get to make their own decisions. That's sort of what their MO has been. And so it is very frustrating. So that's why I keep saying my hope is that we look at this CR. It's only been extended. I mean, it was only written through the 21st of November.
Right,
so at some point, we have to get to work.
I mean, at this point, y'all might as well get another CR because through November is like tomorrow.
Right.
I want to play some sound from your future colleague, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is on your side, which is, a little surprising to folks, I think.
I wonder how you feel about someone like Adelita Grijalva, who, I mean, you say you can't work for your district because the House is out of session. She won her election 6 weeks ago and still has not been sworn in.
She should be sworn in.
Point blank.
Yep.
You haven't started yet, so I'm not going to get you into trouble with Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't want to ask you what you think behind that, but I do wonder if if you're hearing from other Republicans who maybe are with Marjorie Taylor Greene and you and a lot of the Democrats, which is we need to at least bring ourselves back to Washington, D.C. so we can swear you in and actually get to doing the work of the American people, even if the shutdown is still going on.
I think regardless of party, if I were a Republican, I would have been sworn in already. I mean, I think everybody knows that. And we've had several Republicans come out publicly and say, it's crazy. Us waiting this long is crazy. You should have been sworn in a long time ago. There have been several, over 10 pro forma sessions that I could have been easily sworn in any of those. And I think because, Speaker Johnson painted himself into a corner with saying, well, we won't do it. Like I'm just this sort of, in this crazy congressional limbo that, he made the statement that we're not going to swear her in until we reopen and have a regular legislative session, that I'm stuck in this this box that he created.
Yeah. Have you spoken to Speaker Mike Johnson at all during the 6 weeks?
No. Okay. No, I called twice because I didn't know what the protocol was. So the first time I get there, I'm like, oh, so how do we schedule, how do we do this? So I called, left a message, left another message, sent a letter. And then Leader Jeffries, very shortly after I won my election, started lobbying and pushing for us to get a date. And it sort of now that we have a legal case, I don't really think we should have a face-to-face conversation at this point.
Right.
I'm sure that everything will be taken out of context, regardless of what's said.
I'm wondering if you could paint us a little bit of a picture of what you're hearing from your constituents while you're in this limbo and what the difference might be in terms of the work you can get done as a congresswoman-elect versus an actual sworn-in member, especially during a time where, yes, the government is shut down, but constituents might need more attention and help than usual because of the lack of services that they might be receiving because of the shutdown.
You know, Representative Stilwell said it, and it sort of hurt my soul a little bit, but it's true. I don't have constituents until I'm sworn in. I have people that I can help as an everyday person, but I won an election. I have no office. I have no budget. I have no way of onboarding staff until we actually get sworn in. We can't even access federal database. I mean, like, think about it. So the things that I'm doing are things that I've done. I was giving out food boxes, going and talking to people about the effects of this shutdown. I mean, I'm trying to provide resources as Adelita Grijalva, your neighbor, and someone who's been invested in this community for a very long time. But I don't have any official role right now other than I won an election.
Congresswoman-elect, you represent a border district, or you will, once you're sworn in, represent a border district. You'll be the first Latina member of Congress from Arizona once Mike Johnson swears you in. What's your reaction to the extreme immigration enforcement from the administration? And I wonder how you think it played in Tuesday's election results.
It's inhumane and cruel. And I think that's the design of this administration and how they are scapegoating our immigrant communities. It played a huge role. I think people are seeing themselves in the families that are being separated. They're seeing themselves in the people that are working class, veterans that have been deported, citizens that have been deported. And so when you look at how cruel this policy has been, people really appreciate that many of us are only 1 or 2 generations away from the people that are being targeted by this administration. And respectfully, at this point, they can target anyone that looks different. If you speak with an accent, if you're driving if you're driving a truck that looks like you might be a worker, they can pull you over. And that's what they're doing here. We have the 3 ports of entry with Mexico and Arizona in CD7. We have a lot of border communities, and they are some of the safest, most beautiful communities there are. And we're all sick of being targeted by this administration and other people that want to benefit from making it seem as if we are in this, crisis of criminality, which is not true.
Yeah. And the Supreme Court seems to, if I remember correctly, given them carte blanche and using those tactics of looking at someone saying they're brown, they speak Spanish, and treating them like an undocumented immigrant. Arizona Congresswoman-elect Adelita Grijalva, hopefully we won't have to bring you on as an elect, but we will see. I'm sure we'll continue covering your story. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
6 semanas. Luego de haber ganado legítimamente, sigue esperando su juramento, porque el Congreso está en receso. ¿Cuál es la realidad? Esto es una muestra más de cómo el Partido Republicano, influenciado por el trumpismo, manipula las instituciones, todo a su conveniencia. Mike Johnson no está protegiendo la estabilidad del país, está protegiendo los intereses de un movimiento político, uno que teme perder control. Grijalva, por un lado, representa esta amenaza, ¿no? Porque ella simboliza un voto más en contra del secretismo y del abuso de poder. Lo más descarado, incluso Marjorie Taylor Greene, que es una de las figuras más extremas de MAGA, salió a decir públicamente que Grijalva debería ser juramentada ya mismo. Y bueno, cuando incluso alguien como ella lo dice, sabemos que algo está muy mal, ¿no? Este caso, amigos, no solo es una disputa administrativa, esto es una señal de hasta dónde está dispuesto a llegar el trumpismo en el Congreso para mantener a su gente en el poder. Solo pensemos en el presidente. Si el liderazgo de la Cámara puede bloquear la juramentación de un miembro que es electo simplemente porque no le conviene, yo me pregunto, ¿qué detiene a un futuro Congreso de hacer lo mismo con cualquier otro legislador? Y mientras tanto, los votantes de Arizona, que hicieron su parte, que sí participaron en la democracia, están sin representación. No se pueden quejar con nadie. Todo esto porque a los republicanos no les conviene que Grijalva entre al Capitolio. Esto es exactamente lo que Trump y sus aliados siempre han querido, una democracia a su medida, donde las reglas cambian según quien gana. Yo sé que algunos podrían decirme, pero bueno, que Johnson solo está siguiendo el proceso, ¿no? El Congreso está en receso, no se puede juramentar. Pero eso, amigos, es falso. Solo para que entiendan, ha habido más de 10 sesiones pro forma, donde perfectamente pudo haberse realizado el juramento. Aquí no es un tema logístico, esto es político. Y esa diferencia lo cambia todo. Así que sí, señores, ya se asignó un juez. Pero bueno, más allá de lo legal, este caso nos revela algo mucho más preocupante. Es como el trumpismo ha normalizado sabotear la democracia desde adentro. Y bueno, si se permite que este tipo de bloqueos se vuelvan una rutina, estamos abriendo la puerta a un Congreso donde solo gobiernan los que el poder decide juramentar. Autoritarismo disfrazado de procedimiento. Pero bueno, ¿qué opinan ustedes? ¿Creen que Mike Johnson debería de ser sancionado por negarse a cumplir con una función tan básica en el Congreso? ¿Y creen, como yo, que esto puede marcar un precedente muy peligroso para futuros electos, futuros legisladores? Los invito a que me dejen sus opiniones en la caja de comentarios. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarme en este video. Recuerden, como siempre, déjame tu like, comparte el contenido y suscríbete al canal. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Hasta luego.